everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about the Umbrella Academy Season 2, Episode 4. It is called The Majestic 12. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, we're kind of nearing the halfway point, you know. We're 4 out of 10. And obviously we're not super far into the season, though. I feel like we're kind of like a reasonable chunk in now to kind of like gauge kind of what we expect now from the rest of the season. You know, I think after the first episode, maybe the first two, it was like, okay, we're a little bit lukewarm in some of this. We'll see how it feels after a few more, and that's not to say that the point of this, what I'm saying here, is not to say that we're considering dropping it. We're going to finish the season, but I definitely don't think the season is going to particularly improve for me now. I mean, maybe it'll uptick a little bit when things get really crazy at the end.
Yeah, I still think I could have fun, but I don't think it's gonna rise above its weaknesses that much.
I think now that we're 4 out of 10, and this episode, I had all the same problems that I did with the first three.
It's settled into a groove pretty comfortably, and it's not a terrible groove, but it's a groove nonetheless.
Yeah, there's definitely scenes here. There's two particular points in this episode that really annoyed me.
Go on.
From a creative standpoint, two things that felt like there should be big dramatic beats in one way or another. In fact, one of them, actually not both of them in some ways, but certainly one of them was heavily kind of teased last episode, and then just happens so randomly in this episode with no build up, no
this
dramatic.
This is the yet another monster coincidence, like in the first couple episodes that we were complaining about. Like, you can forgive one, maybe two, but this one takes the cake.
Yeah, Allison just runs into Luther as he's sitting eating lunch at this small outside diner.
It would be one thing if she knows he's around now because she's just been told, so she's actively gone looking for him.
Nah, she's surprised.
I can accept that.
She's surprised. You can see it in her face.
No, no, she has no idea. It's just pure coincidence.
The scene's played completely as if it's an accidental run-in. And, the music swells up as they hug, and because we like the characters enough, there's a little bit of feeling when they actually kind of start interacting properly, but the actual moment and just how random this is just feels so clunky from a writing perspective. And then the other one that really annoyed me is that, so Vanya's whole amnesia thing, we set up the idea that the Fives told her everything, but of course the one big detail that she's the one who caused the apocalypse. This episode, she just says to Luther, hey, what actually caused the apocalypse? And then point blank, with no build up, he just goes, you did. And that's just it. She just knows now. And I feel like, I mean, maybe something interesting will come from a character perspective, but I have to say, Vanya's plot this season is really the weak link.
I like the angle here of Luther feeling guilty and like, no, we should have done more. That's a solid follow-up arc to where he was at the end of last season. Vanya just feels like an afterthought.
She kind of does it, because at least before I was kind of thinking, okay, well, she's sort of along for the ride. Even at the start of this scene with Luther, she's there because, hey, you're my brother, so I hear. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to be part of the team. Like, I thought, oh, maybe we'll go a good chunk of the season with her being on the team without knowing what she did, and that could be an interesting dynamic to play with. And it immediately just throws it away here. And it's not so much that it throws it away that bothers me. I mean, it does bother me how quick and random it is, but it bothers me especially that this is a reason for her to run off and be separate again and go back to her own, let's be honest, kind of dull plot.
Well, here's the thing. I don't dislike necessarily her actual plot. It just feels so disconnected from everything else. Like, everyone else's personal lives have been already impacting on, or impacted by the everything going down, right? Like Allison's entire relationship is kind of on the rocks here right now.
Honestly, if I'm thinking about it, really, Allison is the only one whose personal life, I think, is that good. Like, the rest of them, to varying degrees, like, Luther's stuff with the gangster who, kind of kicks him out this episode, I mean, it's fine, it's whatever, like, it's a sort of means to an end, but I think maybe part of the problem with this show is that we're 4 episodes in, and I feel like we're at the point where all these sort of personal lives are taking precedent over the actual plot that is quite kind of interesting, honestly, if they actually devoted, time to it.
And I think that the part of the problem is going back to the 60s, throwing them all in these fresh lives, seeing these fresh lives should be the really interesting part, and it was for the first episode, kind of just seeing where everyone was. And here, like at least with Luther, I appreciate there's an impact on his life, right? I mean, it's not much, but there is a noticeable impact. Okay, he's lost his place to live now. He's maybe going to have trouble with his boss. There's conflict there coming as a result of the main plot, as a result of Five kicking everything off. Diego obviously has tons going on in terms of his life, with Lila being kind of what I mean by that, even though that is very intrinsically tied to the main plot.
That's
but
more
on a personal side of it.
Yeah, that's more tied to the main plot.
It is, but I'm kind of linking them together because that was introduced as their thing, and then she worked into the main plot after. So it kind of starts from there, whereas Vanya's, nothing changes in her plot, really.
Yeah, as of yet, at least. And even one of the things you said there about, okay, it's affecting Luther and there's going to be some sort of conflict with his former boss. I just don't give a shit. I don't care about a conflict with his former boss.
I'm not saying it was particularly compelling. I'm just saying at least there's something.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to be focused on a lot. It's tried to create a lot of drama out of a lot of these stories, and it feels like you combine all the sort of the way it's just doing these what should be big dramatic moments kind of nonchalantly, where it doesn't really feel earned, or it just feels random and kind of like, oh, we want that to happen now, so it's just going to randomly happen now.
I think it's particularly frustrating given that the tease last episode with Luther running into, Allison, that he thought was played like it was a big deal, right? The camera pulled off. I think it did some slow motion moments. Like the whole thing was played like a big deal, and then obviously it was a fake out. But then it was like, well, this one feels so pointless now.
They were kind of the heart of season 1 in a lot of ways. Remember their big dance sequence that they had towards the end of the season? Like, they had all these big moments, and I just kind of went, wait, this is it. This is the reunion. This is how we do this. Is this scene? And all it really boils down to is kind of almost small talk of like, oh, what's up with you? Just pretending that everything's like normal, like we're just old friends running into each other. I don't know. The whole thing just kind of felt like this facade that they're going through, pretending to be somewhat normal, even though they're still kind of discussing the end of the world and discussing time travel and whatnot to a point. It's done in a very kind of like casual small talk way. I feel like the show is determined to focus on the mundanity of things, and while that could stylistically work depending on how it's written, I don't think the mundanity in this season so far has been that interesting. And it's a bit more grating the more we go. The more by episode, it
annoys you a little bit more. It compounds on itself.
The more focus it's taken on these things and these personal lives. Allison's is somewhat interesting though. Allison's is the one that's been interesting because she's actually interjected herself into a really big part of history, and everything with her husband in this episode, where she's worried because he's not came home, and then she's pissed that he's actually fine. He's not in the hospital. He just didn't want to come home and see her, and he's having meetings without her because she can't explain where she came from, or this mysterious power. He's not calling it a power. He doesn't understand it's a power yet. He reads it as she's a traitor, that she is someone who is there to
working for the feds, and is kind of putting in a work, basically pulled rank on the cop is what he thinks happened.
Yeah. So I don't know if pulled rank might be the right term, but yeah, I get what you're saying. But yeah, so that is actually kind of interesting, and because we spent enough time on him as a character and his reactions to her, he's the only one out of the side plots that right now I actually think I have any investment in or care about, because I'm actually somewhat looking forward to him realizing she has a superpower or finding out she's from the future. I'm actually interested in his reaction to that, whereas even Klaus's stuff with the guy from Vietnam, even though conceptually I like that that's what Klaus is doing, that he's trying to solve this, I can't say I got a lot out of the scene this episode where he goes and tries to tell him again, because all it is him going to try to tell him randomly with a confrontation.
I really like it conceptually from Klaus's point of view, his headspace, his desperation, right, essentially, and what it leads to at the end. I think I do like that. But the actual scene itself is kind of just okay.
I think it suffers from a lot of this season's suffering, and season 1 had this a little bit, but I'm really feeling it this season with a lot of these plots where so many of the scenes feel just kind of, I don't know. They feel like on their own they don't have enough of a kind of up and down and a kind of like arc within the scene to kind of make them flow. This scene in particular with Klaus is he just, he's like completely separate from everything else going on. He's just decided to go back to him now. It doesn't feel prompted by anything in his story. So much of what storytelling is in movies and well any medium really, but we're talking about movies and TV here specifically, is that you have a character do something because something in their previous scene or in one of their previous scenes clearly is a motivation to propel the next action they take. And the problem with this Klaus plot is, okay, we introduced the whole idea that he wants to save this guy that he knew in Vietnam. There was nothing after the scene last episode about that. There was nothing with him, waking up with Allison that kind of related in any way to that. It was mostly just played for laughs with him trying to give her some like advice because she was worried.
He tried to do the frog and the scorpion story and just didn't get the point at the end.
Yes, didn't mess it up. Yes, the point is frogs are dicks and we don't negotiate with terrorists or something like I said at the end, which was amusing.
I think that's what he said. Which I mean, he's probably right in both of those things.
I mean, yeah,
I'm not arguing with that. Not quite the point of the story, though.
No, not the point of the story. But there's nothing to propel him to actually go back and it's just him trying again. It's just him going back for another round. There's nothing that's actually in the story propelled him to that next scene. And obviously you have to have some scenes at the start of a story to set things up, and that's why you forgive the first one. But it kind of compounds a little bit, and that's why it's so frustrating when, having Luther and Allison just run into each other after we've already teased it, after they're already both aware that they're around, that there's no actual like drive from either character to actually set that meeting up and actually have it pay off because one of them, felt the need to do it. So then there's a reason behind it for at least one of them, maybe not both of them, but at least one of them made a point of reaching out, and that has implications for how they're feeling and how they're wanting to interact with the other one, despite the fact that, let's say it was Allison, right? Let's say Allison did go intentionally looking for him, which again, I don't think she did, but let's say she did. It would mean that despite the fact that she's married, she's seeking comfort in this person that we know she loves, and that would tell us something.
Frustrating is, I think it had to be Allison this time, because we already had Luther, his attempt, right? And you could say, well, you were out, so I tried again, but from his point of view, the message was passed along, and if she wanted to see him, she would, right? I can see that logic. I think it had to be Allison, and I think it should have been, especially now at this point where she feels lost, abandoned, her husband's missing, she's not here, she's, at a pretty low point. Her going and looking for Luther would have made perfect sense. Yeah,
but that's not the way it was played.
No, absolutely not. Like, that is not what happened.
And because of that, it felt really just random and weird, and it just felt like that this is the scene that's happening because it's the scene that needs to happen next, not because anything in the story's propelled us to this next scene. And in episode 4 of a completely serialized show, we should not be feeling that anymore. We should be feeling that the vast majority of things are happening because they've been propelled to. And this is not something we talk about a lot because most things that are well written just have this, and it's the sort of thing we don't talk about because it's just how it's supposed to function.
It's not something you praise when it's there because it's not usually praiseworthy unless it does it in a particularly inventive way.
Yeah.
It's usually just the basics.
Yeah, obviously the one thing that does kind of propel forward is the main plot with Five wanting to, investigate things further. Even that I'm still finding a little bit dull at times because, this whole thing, this episode where he's found an invitation during the fight from last episode. Obviously Diego's alive, we never even mentioned that, but Diego's alive.
He's just fine.
Yeah. He found an invitation to this party, but it's a secret thing for the Majestic 12, and it kind of felt like. Do you remember? Was there a scene or in that section of episode 3? Was there a moment where we see him like find something while Diego's fighting?
He was definitely rooting around in the office. We definitely cut back to him rooting around while Diego was fighting. I don't know if we saw him find anything though, but he was rooting.
He very possibly did. I mean, it's not a big deal either way. It's just one of those things where it was kind of in the episode itself. Maybe he did find something I just forgot in that moment. But it kind of just felt like he whipped out this thing. Here's a device that'll get us to the next part of the plot.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember him searching, so I kind of wasn't too bothered by this one. It was a logical conclusion to him searching for stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like... I say that sometimes when stuff's really inelegant, but I feel like when stuff isn't inelegant, it's like I can see the Matrix code the entire time. I don't see the story that they want me to feel. I'm seeing all the wires and how it's moving from thing to thing, because it's just so clunky in how it's doing it. But that is what it is. We should talk about Lila a little bit. There's a whole montage at the start of how the handler kind of took her in because they killed her parents, and she was like, "Oh, I fancy being a mother." And just,
as you do, yeah.
Yeah, took her in, trained her from childhood, explains why she's so capable, and their weird kind of relationship, and just kind of, and she, we see her talk to her a little bit. The handler,
and she's insistent that they protect Five at all costs. She's clearly off mission here because Lila's like, "Hey, those Swedes tried to kill me as well," and she's like, "It's fine. They know not to do that," which they definitely don't.
Yeah, I don't believe her either. Yeah, that was the main thing I was going to say. And yeah, she's told to protect Five at all costs. Why the handler wants Five protected is maybe something that I mean, the most obvious thing is she wants to torture him herself.
Some personal revenge, yeah.
But there could be more to it than that. There could be some sort of like plot reason where she needs him for something, or...
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a twist in that she actually does want Five to save the world. This time she's working against... It's the Commission, not the agency. The Commission. I noticed in this episode. Yes. If she's actively working against them to undermine them for the position they've left her in.
Yeah, no, I could see this is our play to like get our position back, to climb our way up the ladder, which makes sense for the character. It works, but all the stuff here's fine. We have Diego run into his the mother, but not the the recreation of her, the real one, and kind of being starstruck by it. He dances with Lila a little bit, and it has them bonding a bit more. It's kind of like this stuff kind of ticks the box that I'm otherwise complaining about in all the other plots, in the sense that there is a bit of drive here, just in the sense that it is going forward. But like I say, it does kind of come across a little bit on the easy side, in the sense that here's the thing to take us to the next part of the plot, and here's this and that. I
think this is one where if there wasn't problems in other areas of the episode in this regard, you wouldn't even be feeling it.
Probably. And just actually to compare to season 1 a little bit, I felt kind of underwhelmed by the fight scene towards the end with the music, because that was a big thing in season 1, was a lot of the really stylish fight scenes to music.
Yeah, it was.
And I really enjoyed those in season 1, and I kind of felt this one was lacking. There was a couple of little okay beats in it, but for the most part, it was just kind of... It felt a lot more generic in terms of a TV fight scene.
Yeah, it tried to play up the actual dramatic choice of, Lila choosing Five over Diego, which, sure, there's probably some interesting stuff to come from that. But from a visual standpoint, it was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't... Yeah. It wasn't as standout as the show has set expectations.
I think that moment where it's like she's right into the hallway, and on the left Diego's fighting two bad guys, two of the Swedes, and on the right you got Five fighting the one. So despite the fact that Diego clearly needs the help a bit more because he's 2-on-1, she has to make the dramatic choice to go to Five. I think this moment and how little I felt as she was making this choice is kind of where I realised how little I was into this season now, in terms of just what's going on.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the follow-up stuff to this is going to be good. It's kind of my hope. I didn't really care for the moment itself. I mean, I didn't dislike the moment, but I didn't have the attachment to it, the emotion. But I saw what they were doing and kind of went, okay, maybe I'll like what this does after this scene.
Yeah, Five, of course, notices how good she is in a fight, which piques his interest. Very curious.
It's suspicious, yeah.
Yeah, he was already suspicious of her, because he even says to her before they go in, my brother might trust you, but I don't trust a goddamn thing.
I don't think he trusts anyone, to be fair.
That's very possible. Speaking of Five moments, I mean, I think he's one of the better actors on the show, and it's not. I mean, most of the actors are actually pretty solid, but there's a lot of moments with him that I think stand out. The moment earlier on when Vanya's like bailing and saying, "No, you didn't tell me about the whole end of the world thing, and it was my fault." The way he tries to argue with her just felt really on point, and then he turns around and Luther's punched a hole in the wall and he's giving him the finger through the wall. That was a funny little beat. That was the sort of little beats that make Umbrella Academy. It's just the actual ongoing plot and the scene-to-scene construction is just really jarring. This year.
I agree. I think he is. I don't know if it's necessarily that he's the best actor. I think they're all quite good. To be fair, I don't really have any acting critiques, especially in the main cast. I think he stands out because he's this 16-year-old, playing the old man doing a fantastic job at it. So it's a little bit more of an unusual role, so you notice it a bit more as opposed to the others. I don't know. I'm just this season. I feel bad for comparing it to Doom Patrol, but again, heavily inspired by Doom Patrol originally. Launched on the same day. I think the comparisons are inevitable. Even even less so now, I guess, that they're not right against each other every week like they were before, or on the same day as it was. But it feels like Doom Patrol in its second season just embraced everything and got weirder. It just went all in on the weird, and this feels like it's taken a step back. It's like it's trying to play it safer instead. I mean, the weirder moments, not even in terms of just the situation, but the way the episodes were constructed, like the big dance sequence, in the house at the start of the season. This season has nothing of that.
It's lacking that character. That character's missing it, and I do feel like some of these problems were in season 1, but there was enough other good stuff that seems to be missing this season that kind of took my mind off of it, because I was getting these other things that were. It's sad to say that the shorter run times haven't helped anything. I don't think it doesn't feel like it anyway.
I mean, it helps that I'm sitting here 10 minutes less, but.
No, but what I think the thing is that it's funny. I think you joked back in episode 1. Let's just hope they haven't taken out the time that was devoted to all that good stuff. And I feel like, honestly, 4 episodes in, it feels like that's what they did do.
It does. And I know this is a bit weird. Like when we were a bit negative on the first episode, but we weren't like we weren't that bad. I think we're worse now than we were in the first episode. And all our commenters were like, "No, stick with it. It's great." And
all but one. What mentioned?
Oh, okay, no, okay. I didn't see. Maybe I didn't see that one because I didn't check them all. But I don't know. Are we watching a different show?
The one commenter did say that they felt by the end of the season exactly what we felt after one episode, which was I mean, there were so many comments saying, "No, trust me, it gets better." That it's okay. Majority, Allison probably takes this, but I don't know. 4 episodes in, and I'm not feeling super whelmed by it.
Yeah, I'm not particularly optimistic for the rest of this. I mean, it's not terrible. Well, it sounds really negative where we are here now. Compared to some other stuff we've watched over the past year, this is still like, I'm happy to sit and watch this. There has been shows over the last year where we've been 7 episodes in. I'm like, please God, do we have to finish this? Why are we doing this? And this, I'm like, no, it's fine. I can get through this.
See The Outsider. I had to think about that
there. So forgettable, you forgot the name.
For an example. In fact, speaking of big moments, so that dramatic choice of her picking 5 over Diego should be a big moment. And I have to admit, I'm not particularly looking forward to Diego questioning why she did that either, because honestly, him being kind of angry and like, I'm the man, blah, 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 tell me, I'm not really looking forward to that exchange, to be honest. Diego's at his best when he's stabbing people and doing vigilante stuff and trying to
when he's being shit Batman.
And when he's trying to pretend that he's he's a little Jason Todd in some ways. He's more likable, don't get me wrong, but he's a little Jason Todd in that he thinks he's the best Batman, and he really isn't.
Not.
Yeah, and he really isn't. But I think he's more charming here. I don't know how it's the whole love interest thing with Lila. I'm feeling a little bit like with it.
I don't think they've quite got the chemistry to pull it off.
No, because there's a moment where she sort of takes the lead in the dance scene, and it's meant to be kind of like, he's kind of like oddly like, oh, okay. After he complains at first, there's a little moment where he's like, oh, okay.
I mean, on new love stories this season, I think Vanya and Sissy have way more chemistry than Diego and Lila.
They have more chemistry, but the point I was about to bring up is just how little I gave a shit about the kid seemingly almost dying in the bottom of the lake. And there's this big visual effect. Vanya uses her powers to catapult all the water up, but it's this big glorious visual.
I like the sheer concept of okay, so it's sound waves, so she actually amplifies her heartbeat. I like the visual of the way it was portrayed, because you see the heartbeat cut first. It kind of like that lights up individually, and then it kind of amplifies out from there. I like that as a concept. And visually, it looked pretty good. I don't really have any problem with the effects.
Yeah,
it's just
I just
okay, cool. Kid's not dead.
Yeah, I was having a hard time. It was this emotional scene when she's, when the mother runs in, she finds, and she's like, "Oh, my boy," and it's like, he's okay, he's gonna be okay, and mouth to mouth before that, all those things, and there's a lot of dramatic speeches in this. Even before this happens, she wants to run away with Vanya. It's like, hey, we can just run. If you're in trouble with the law, we can just run right now. I'll even tell my husband, we'll just run. And it's like, okay, we're getting close. And then obviously after this big dramatic save of the child, she makes this big dramatic speech about how after they got married, she little by little, the box that she's in got smaller and smaller. You don't even notice that it's getting smaller until one day someone kind of opens the box. Obviously, in this case, Vanya being the metaphorical person who's opened the box, or the person who's opened the metaphorical box, to put the right way around. And then there's a kiss, and like, I appreciate what it's trying to do here. It feels so tangential to everything else going on, and I don't think again, one of the things that I said a while ago is that what I think would be a better idea for a lot of this season was, instead of having a little bit of each plot in every episode, is you take an episode and you say, maybe there's a little bit of a B plot to advance the main plot, say, but you have an episode, whether it be episode 3 or 4 or whatever, once we know where Vanya is, because maybe you can hide that for a little bit if we're not doing a little bit of everyone. And you do a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you have an arc throughout the episode. And instead, what's happened is we've had little snippets of just, here's the status quo, then a little snippet of, maybe there's something between them, maybe there's a spark.
Yeah, I 2 points here. One, I wonder if the people who told us that it's much better and stick with it is people who obviously they were telling us that after we'd watched one episode, so within the first couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd obviously binged through it. I wonder if you don't feel these problems as much if you view it all as kind of one big thing, because there's not all these. We're looking at each episode. What's the arc of this episode? A lot of them don't have that, but maybe there's arcs of the season that work if in that context. Maybe.
There's definitely some shows that benefit a little bit more or less from being binged. However, not to this extent. To this extent, this is not. You can't excuse this by saying you should binge it, because
no, I'm not excusing it. I'm just wondering if that's part of what it was. And then the other thing I was gonna say is, I think you were onto something there by hiding Vanya. Imagine if they hypothetically rewind the season a little bit in our minds. We don't see Vanya in those first couple episodes. We come back 5 like, no, the apocalypse is going to happen. We brought it back, and there's that fear that they brought Vanya back with them, and they don't know. And there's okay, so 5 recruits, everyone else roughly, that can still kind of go to plan or not to plan, as it were. And it's actively, we need to find Vanya before she does anything. And then after a while, you can reveal, oh no, she's got amnesia. She's literally not even a threat. It's kind of an easy other option that has more drama and potential and gives characters more of a drive.
Yeah, I think the big thing that this is lacking is momentum. I feel very little, and season 1 kind of had that problem in the sense that you had 5 saying the world's ending in 10 days, and he's the only one that really seems to care. But he was kind of starting to convince Luther and Diego to kind of get involved and whatever. But you did have the tension of constantly being hunted. I feel like, Hazel and Cha-Cha versus these Swedes. Hazel and Cha-Cha were interesting characters. Whenever we had scenes with them on their own, bickering in the hotel room or the donut shop or whatever, I felt like I was getting to know them and they were kind of interesting. There was actually almost like a kind of charm to it, not having that momentum in season 1, because it was like all about building to the ending where they did kind of come together. But there was actually something that built, at least as we started to realise that Vanya was the one behind everything. This season, because we spent all season 1 getting to the point where everyone's kind of on board and realising how serious this is, resetting to a point where there's no momentum again, it is basically just kind of like really hurt, like the momentum, I guess, to use the same word again, but it does, like, everything feels like it's come to a grinding halt. And then you add on this just sort of fundamental problem of scenes not propelling into other scenes. At least that's what it feels like to me. Not for every single plot. Some scenes obviously do have that. But then there's other scenes that I would just cut. Like, you have Luther in this episode who then gets kicked out by the landlord, right, of his room, because like, I don't want to be in the bad books of Gangster Man, so you're going to have to leave.
Yeah.
And he goes to nerdy, conspiracy guy. And all you needed for this was for him to like chap on the door, have the door open, have it be conspiracy guy, and cut away. That's where he's went to stay. That's all we needed to know. Instead, we get this whole extended sequence of them being on nitrous.
Taking laughing gas, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I got nothing out of it.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I feel like, I don't know, personally, I feel like I'm noticing some of these things more because of, I'm rewatching Archer at the minute. Now, bear with me, this sounds completely unrelated.
Okay.
But the way Archer links scenes, like 90% of its scenes, at least in the earlier seasons, are done by the end of a scene, a character will say a line, and then the new scene, it'll cut to the new scene, and someone will say something that links to that last line. It'll either be a direct answer almost, or even though it's a completely unrelated situation, it'll work this completely wonderful through line, linking the scenes, this story.
What you're saying, it's basically the joke from the end of the second Austin Powers, where they all keep almost saying dick, but when it cuts to the new person, it's the word for dick, but in a different context. I get the gist of what you're saying.
I mean, kind of, but
it's a bit gimmicky, but sure, right, go.
No, but it's not done in like as a joke necessarily. It's just a way of flowing the scenes. They're not even they're not always jokes in the finishing lines. They're just thematically linked.
Doesn't have to be a joke to be gimmicky, but go on.
I know, but like I say, it's not done as a gimmick. It's just a thematic flow.
Okay.
So watching that with such flow, I think I watched an episode about half an hour before I watched the last episode of this. I really felt the stagnation. How stilted it is between scenes. There is no linking anything up. Even forget episode to episode. Forget the arcs within the individual scenes. Just scene to scene feels really stilted and broken up a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing where I feel like scene to scene can be a little more jarring. Let's say you've got an A plot and a B plot. Like, I don't know if A plot scene to B plot scene necessarily has to have a through line. Often, like, good writing will have it there, or sometimes it'll just be editing. Sometimes you'll have a shot that kind of mirrors the other shot, and it'll just have this little thing. I can live with not having that to a certain point. But what I do need is for the first A plot scene and the second A plot scene to feel like they naturally flow from one to the other, and in terms of what the characters are doing, the choices that are being made. And there's far too many scenes and characters in this. Like, obviously, after Klaus has his whole confrontation, right, where the dad gets really homophobic, and then the kid punches him, and it's kind of this sad moment for him. He goes, and so after that was a scene where he goes to a liquor store. He's been sober for since he arrived here, basically, from the sounds of it.
I think a little bit before, actually. I think there was a point when he got back from Vietnam.
You're
last
right.
Season.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but he said 3 years, I think, which I guess is still true because that was only like a few days before.
It was only an extra couple of days, so yeah.
And it's we get this montage of him like sort of like collecting tons and tons of booze, and he drinks it all off camera because we see him go back to the mansion. Then he doesn't show up again until later on. But fair enough. Him getting all the booze is propelled by the fact that he had this other scene where obviously it was heartbreaking for him and whatever. But that first scene should have been propelled by something. Like him making the choice to go back there. I don't know. It felt so...
It feels like once his plot got started, it was fine. Because from there it led on. It just didn't know how to start. So they went, it's fine. They kind of just took the approach of, it's a new episode. It's fine. Just start it.
Yeah, but there's not really an ending to it either, though. That is the thing, because he just comes home and falls asleep on Allison's couch. There's not really an arc for him. It's just like one plot beat, really. Ultimately, that's all it is. It's this one confrontation scene. There's a little bit after about the drinking, but to show how it's affecting him. But it's mainly just one plot beat.
It is. I do like the stuff after, like him, falling off the wagon and just being, back at the same place he was for a lot of last season with, Allison just kind of. She probably doesn't even realize he's been sober for 3 years, and just looking at him, same old, puts the blanket over him.
Yeah,
I like that beat.
I mean, let's be honest. Most of the plots don't really seem to have beginning, middles, and ends in an episode. They tend to just be the next chunk of each story, sort of progressing.
Yeah, I think the 5 Diego one in this one is probably the only one that does. Because that definitely does with we have a thing to go and spy on this thing, this meeting, and then it ends with the big fight. It
ends with Five shouting after the father, and that has been that phrase that he recognises and he's kind of weirded out by, and that's kind of the ending. It's one of those things though. It cut to the credits and I went, "Oh, that was the ending." Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay, I guess that was the ending." I mean, I don't know. I see what they're doing with some stuff. I get that Lila, her being kind of adopted by the handler, is kind of meant to mirror the adoption of all the other characters by Hargreaves. So like I get what they're doing thematically there. That's fine. It's totally fine. There's definitely story concepts that are sprinkled throughout which are solid enough. But I am finding the writing to be more grating as the season goes on, and so I mean we actually ended up having quite a long discussion on this one because we were talking about the problems compounding. We'll see what episode 5 brings. But this is going out Saturday, so the next one won't go out until Tuesday, I think. So apologies for the couple of days off, but the weekend tends to be quite busy, so we don't have time to record another one until Monday. Yeah. So Tuesday's the next day you'll get one. But yes, we are going to finish it. We'll get through the goddamn thing. So
I mean, it's helped by the fact that a couple of other shows are ending or just ended.
It does. I wanted to be optimistic. I really did. I wanted to feel like all the things I was concerned about in that first episode. But it's that thing.
You were so sure. No, they're gonna swerve us. Of course, they know what they're doing because they were so self-aware in that first episode with the title.
Yeah,
they're like, they know what they're doing here. They're setting us up to swerve it, and
also
they weren't.
As far as spelling things out for the audience goes, so they're like, "Oh, we know who 11 members of the Majestic 12 are," and at the end of the day, they was like, "Well, I don't know who the 12th is," and 5 gives this look. He just looks up at him, and from that look, I got it. Their father's the 12th, right? But then it had to do a thing where it cut to a photo of him and like sort of go dun dun dun, and I'm like, oh, I got it from the look. I got it from 5's look. You didn't have to beat me over the head with it. It just annoyed me.
Yeah. That's stuff that always gets us, isn't it?
God, don't insult my goddamn intelligence. All right. Anyway, I'm sorry if you enjoyed this season. I'm sorry that we are ripping it to shreds pretty much, and it's not even the worst thing ever. It's just there's a lot of problems.
No, I agree. I feel like we might not seem as negative for the next couple unless they introduce new problems, because we didn't really speak about any new problems in this, just the way they've compounded and kind of felt worse. We probably won't be doing that too much next time.
Oh, we'll see.
Unless it's particularly grating, yeah.
We'll see how miserable I am after I watch episode 5. But that is episode 4. Let us know what you think of episode 4 in the comments. Please do liking is very important on YouTube. It is the quickest and easiest way to support us and show your support, and YouTube will help us find more people if you do. You can also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?